All right, we're going to have you do something. We're going to read Jeremiah. We're going to read a couple verses in Jeremiah 17. I'll warn you of this now. I'll give you a second to turn there in just a moment. But we're also going to read a little bit out of Psalm chapter 1 tonight as well. I'll give you a second to turn there in just a minute. Jeremiah 17, verse 7 and 8. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is. For he shall be as a tree planted by rivers of... For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. And then turn over to Psalm chapter 1. Psalm 1. I'm going to put a marker in there so I don't wind up losing my place in Jeremiah. Psalm 1. It's just 6 verses. I'm going to go ahead and read those 6 verses. I'm not going to wait for you. If you're not there yet, I'm going to get started, and we'll get going with the message. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer. Lord, I want to thank you for this time we can take tonight in your word and in your house. Lord, I do pray that you will use this time, Lord. Use me this evening. I pray that you will you'll speak through me, Lord. I believe as I was studying, preparing for tonight, I believe this is the message that you have for us tonight, Lord. You know what we need tonight. Pray that you'll just use me, Lord, and pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. Jeremiah 17, I don't know if when we turned there, when we read it, if it sparked anyone else. Probably 3 weeks ago, I brought a message out of Jeremiah 17, 7 and 8. And when I did, kind of in my studying with it, God had showed me something else as well, and has been something I've kind of spent the last few weeks mulling over and studying a little bit. So I wanted to this evening, we're going to be looking at that. I want to start tonight's message, I guess, a little different than normal, sort of, but a little bit. There's a lot going on right now, and when people are going through stresses and trials and difficulties, it's common to see people fall, because we can only handle so much on our own. We try to handle things, and we try to juggle it all, and at some point it becomes more than a person can take. You all know my family right now is juggling a lot, and on top of that, I have a few other things that are stress causers that I'm juggling right now. I told, where's he at? He's probably out counting offering. I told Brother Huff and Brother Pickens earlier this evening, just you can only juggle so much. And so last night, we went to go to bed, and it was late, and I was already tired and exhausted from what had been a long day. And the kids got in bed, and I'm laying there half asleep, and all of a sudden you hear the crash. We're living right, a bunk bed fell off the wall, just like crashed off the wall with a child on it. It was a great thing. I'm not going to pretend I was a spiritual giant at that moment who doesn't struggle. My kids can attest, I about lost it. It was kind of one of those, I shoved it out of the way and said, sleep on the couch, I'll deal with it tomorrow, it's fine. Just leave it. Because we hit that point, don't we, that we just feel like I can't possibly take more. I can't do it anymore, because that we just hit that point of all of these things have compounded on each other, and I just can't take the stress of it anymore. And often what that causes is it causes us to fall. It causes us to struggle, to trip spiritually, if you will. But I think it's pretty universally agreed, no one wants to fall. No one goes into their spiritual life with the plan that I'm going to struggle, I'm going to trip, and I'm going to fall. No one goes on a walk physically with the plan that they're going to, trip and fall in it. Some are more prone to it than others, but no one plans to be. Thinking about while studying for this, people love watching on YouTube or social media people falling. Do you know videos of people hurting themselves is the most watched videos on like any sort of platform? We don't watch videos of people successfully completing some cool task. No, we watch videos of them attempting some cool task and failing miserably and hurting themselves because we enjoy seeing others' pain. But none of us want to be the one that falls. We enjoy watching, videos or we enjoy laughing at someone else's expense, if you will, but none of us want to be the one that falls down. It's no different when you're walking along and you see someone trip over their own foot and they fall. It is human nature. Maybe it's mean, but it's human nature that we all laugh a little bit when that happens. Some of us are better at hiding it than others that we're laughing until you're out of earshot at least. But, it's the natural. If someone trips and falls and we find it funny, I try hard to be that person that makes sure they're okay before I laugh and then walk away and laugh. But we all find it funny. But none of us want to be the one who falls. No one wants to be the one who is laughed at. No one wants to be the one who trips and falls. Spiritually isn't much different. Now, I want to say this. While we might find it humorous to see someone trip and fall walking down the road, it isn't funny at all when someone falls spiritually. In fact, quite the opposite. It's extremely sad. Growing up in a pastor's home and then being a pastor myself, there's not much that breaks your heart more than seeing someone fall. I was thinking about it while studying for this. Over the years, I've watched friends fall. I mean, people that I love, some people that I grew up with, others that maybe I knew for years, but people that I was close to, and for different reasons, they have fallen. Some out of church completely, that for whatever reason, they got upset and they left church and are completely away from God. Others who fell out of a good church and are attending things that I'm hesitant to even call a church. And every time I hear from them, or every time I see something that they are doing, it's sad because they fell. I've seen pastors fall, men that I thought believed like I did. My family was talking about that this week. It's hard. Men that I thought would take the same stands that I did. But because of the fact that it's hard to stand against storms, they fell. Some who have fallen completely out of the ministry, that they got bitter and they got angry and they want nothing to do with God or His work, that maybe something happened in their life or in their family or in their ministry that they didn't like, and they decided that they didn't want to serve a God who would allow that to happen to them, and now they're no longer serving God. Others who maybe are still in the ministry but have changed. They no longer stand for the Bible. They no longer stand for doctrine. They no longer stand for the things of God because it's hard. And they decided that if they are just willing to slack on these areas, building a crowd gets easier. And I put it that way on purpose, building a crowd, because they aren't building a church, they're building a crowd. They've fallen, and it's sad. A couple nights ago, Kaylee, she's over there. I was going to point over here, but she moved on me tonight, was listing pastors. It was an interesting thing to hear from my daughter, who is listing pastors who are roughly my age, who stand like I do on what the Bible teaches. And it was, I don't know, it was a sobering thing, a sad thing as a dad, that my daughter is saying, wow, Dad, that's a short list of guys who are your age in the ministry who actually stand on the Bible, because so many have fallen. It's a hard thing to see. I think one of the hardest from a pastor's standpoint is seeing church members fall. People that you've worked with, some for years, people that you've poured your time into, people that you have grown to love, and I'm not a mushy, emotional person. That's just not me. I think my wife has seen me cry like 2 times in our 17 years of marriage. I'm just not that guy. But I love the people of this church. I love the people that God allows me to work with here, and it's devastating to see them fall. As I prepared for this message, my mind thought of some specific people that it just breaks my heart to think of because I saw them fall. One that I heard about this week, that it breaks my heart to hear the decisions that they are making. Now here's the reality. I think just like physically falling, everyone here would say, well, I don't want to be the one who spiritually falls. No one wants to trip and fall. No one wants to be, the example that the pastor thinks of when he thinks of a heartbreaking person that, you've poured your life into and they fell. No one wants to be that. So how do we avoid it? If we say, well, I don't want to fall and I don't want that to be me in my spiritual life, how do we avoid that? And I think we can see it out of this passage, Jeremiah 17, verse 7 and 8. And I'm going to give you this at the start, and then we'll get into this to kind of try and explain it. I think the key is to be firmly rooted. Like the hymn says, like a tree planted by the rivers of water, Lord, I shall not be moved. To be firmly rooted. I want to look at it in this way this evening, being rooted in God. Because that's where it starts. It is. If you want to be rooted and grounded and firm and immovable, it starts by being immovable in Him. So what does it mean to be rooted in God? First thing I want to see this evening, it means to be trusting in Him. Trusting in Him. Jeremiah 17, verse 7. We started with that earlier. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord and whose hope is in the Lord. Trusting Him. Trusting in Him for your eternity. I know this is the Wednesday night group. I know that it seems to be coming up in messages a lot lately. I know that often, the Wednesday night crowd is, often thought of as, well, that's your faithful core of the church. I understand that, and because of that, I won't, belabor this part. But I also know that this is the very foundation of being rooted in God. Because if you aren't rooted in what because you are not going to be rooted, boy, that sentence I have written here is going to kill me. I'm going to read it instead of trying to remember what it says. I'm going to skip that because I can't even read it and get it right. We're going to move past that sentence entirely because I'm reading it and it doesn't make sense to me this second. So as soon as the message is over, I'll read it and I'll be like, oh, that's what I meant. So after church, if you want to know what that is, come talk to me. And by then, I might have it figured out. Right now, nope. All right. There are lots of people that think that Christian concepts are good. They aren't believers. They've never trusted God, but they can see the advantages in maybe living a good life, and they can see some benefits in biblical principles, but the foundation isn't right. They're just kind of picking and choosing the ones that fit that they already want to do. But if the foundation isn't right, it does no eternal good. It's good to be a good person, but a good person makes no eternal difference. The eternal difference comes when you've accepted Christ. And I know these are familiar verses. Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. Romans 10:13, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Trusting God for your eternity. Trusting that He is the only way, that it's not of works, that it's not of something that you do, but what He did. Trust that it's not something that you can lose, but God says He's going to hold you in His hand and no man can pluck you out. If you want to ensure that you won't fall, it starts with being sure that you are rooted in Him for your eternity. Trusting Him for your eternity. Trusting Him for for the day-to-day. I know that I brought this concept up Sunday night in the message as well, but it just kind of keeps coming up in my studies. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but trusting in God is not a one-time thing. Trusting God for your eternity, that's a one-time deal. You trust God and ask Him to save you, and it's a done deal. You never have to worry about it again. It never needs to be renewed or done again, but there are things that come up in your life every day that you need to trust God in. We try really hard to be self-reliant. We try really hard to be self-reliant where we don't need anyone else. Often, we try to be so self-reliant that we think we don't need God. But we do. Trust Him. The Bible tells us He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, the wealth in every mine. He knows the number of hairs on your head. He knows every need you have before you know that you have it. He knows how much you can handle even when you don't. Trust Him. If I'm trusting Him for my day-to-day, it means I don't need to find a way to handle my problems, because He will. That's hard for us to grasp. It really is, but it's truth. We claim that we trust God, and then the moment that something comes in our life, we think, well, I have to come up with my solution to that. Trust God. I know that that's not an easy thing. I know that's harder for some than it is for others. Some people are that personality that always feel like they need to have control and always feel like they need to handle every situation. You ever thought maybe you're handling and controlling God right out of it? That maybe He has a better way than you can even imagine, but you never give Him a chance because you are so in charge? Trust God. Trusting Him for my day-to-day means trusting Him to take care of me. It also means, and I will be real honest here, this is difficult for me personally, it also means I don't have to worry about it. This is an area we struggle in because as people, we are worriers. You know, a problem comes along and our very first reaction, almost always, is to panic. Our first response is I'm going to react to this problem coming up. Trust God. A situation comes up and you think, well, what am I going to do? Trust God. A problem at work and we panic, well, what if I lose my job? What if this makes it hard to go to work every day? What am I going to do? Trust God. A problem with a friend or a family member and we get this panic of, well, what am I going to do? This is going to make it difficult, or it might cause some problem between us. What do I do? Trust God. And we could put that in any scenario you can think of. Rather than coming up with your own way, rather than reacting and panicking over this problem that's here and what do I do? Just trust God. I know that sounds simple. I know it's not as easy as it is to say. But it's the reality. This is a lot of the reason that people fall spiritually. Because they didn't trust God. It may have taken on some other form, and they may have blamed something else, but it often comes back to they're not trusting Him. Being rooted in God, being firm and immovable, starts with trusting God. Being rooted in God is trusting. Being rooted in God is number 2, spreading. Look at Jeremiah 17, verse 7 and 8 again. We'll read both verses. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope is in the Lord. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers, or planted by the waters, that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the years of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. Did you catch that? That spreadeth out her roots by the river. What's this talking about? I'm rooted in God and spreading? What does that mean? it's talking about your relationship, specifically in a couple areas, at least a couple areas that I want to try to point out this evening. Constantly learning. Constantly learning. Relationships are weird. It's a weird thing. Anyone who is married or has had even just a friend for a long time with someone, relationships are weird. They're just not normal. When Lisa and I were first engaged, I would have told you that I knew everything about her. We talked all the time. I was sure that before we got married, I knew everything about her. I quickly learned I did not. My dad, in pre-marriage counseling, one of the exercises he wanted us to do was to write down a list of things that the other did that annoyed us. And we both kind of laughed a little because, couldn't think of anything. And no joke, I was young and arrogant and dumb, I'll admit that. I thought, I know her. She doesn't do anything that annoys me. And I really thought, as a young man getting married, and I'm not kidding, I thought, I know her. She doesn't do anything that annoys me. And my next thought was, boy, I feel bad for those people who are marrying someone that has features that annoy them. There's people that actually get married like that. But she has none. Both of us came back, and you can ask my dad. We told him, blank piece of paper, here you go, there's nothing. We thought we knew each other. In reality, we didn't. I'm going to get myself brownie points here. I still can't think of anything to write about her, but I know she has a list about me by this point. I'm kidding. If she didn't have a list, she does right now, because I just gave her one more thing to add. No. The reason I tell that is this: we are 17 plus years that we've been married, and every day I'm learning things about her that I didn't know the day before. Things that to me, I don't know, over the years that have astonished me. Things that I thought she liked, and I thought I knew about her, and I learned I don't really know that well about her in some things. There was she just. I can hear you whispering. You're not a good whisperer, wife. Yes, I'm going to tell that story right now. Anyway, some nights I should not listen to people. People don't whisper as well as you think you do, so you know. I can hear most of you. It's bad, because I try to just ignore it most of the time. You're welcome. Things about her that I thought I knew for years and didn't. For a very long time, I was convinced I knew her favorite kind of ice cream. Listen, anyone who knows me knows ice cream is a big deal to me. I was convinced I knew her favorite kind of ice cream for years. And so every time I bought ice cream, I bought that kind of ice cream. I didn't like that kind of ice cream, but it was her favorite, so I bought it. And I, suffered through eating it, because I'm a good husband like that, so I would eat it for her. Right? Thank you. We had been married probably close to 15 years. When she finally told me, I don't actually like that ice cream. But let me go for 15 years thinking this is her favorite. Things that I thought I knew, I didn't. It's a silly story, I know, but a relationship is always learning. That hasn't changed. That there are still things that it's like, wow, that she'll say or she'll do, and I think, wow, I didn't know that. How did I not know that? A relationship is always learning, and that's the way it should be. It ought to be that way. Husbands, you should be constantly learning about your wife. They are, here's where I lose my brownie points. They are women. Their likes and dislikes change daily, so you need to be paying attention to that. And while I say that somewhat jokingly, you said it, not me. That was him. I'm not getting in trouble for that one. No, but while I say that, what I mean by that is it should be that because of that we are paying attention and learning. So here's where we parallel this to the message. Our relationship with God, ought to be constantly learning. It should never reach the point that I think, well, I know God pretty well, and I've been saved for a lot of years, and I've read my Bible, this many times from cover to cover. I know him pretty well. I don't need to learn anymore. No, I should be constantly learning. Our relationship with God ought to be constantly learning. Our relationship with God, this idea of spreading, our relationship with God ought to be constantly growing. Again, they're all good stories, I think. Again, I'll give an example of my wife. I have a lot of them in this message. All good things. But she does this nearly every anniversary. That she'll ask me, I think every wife does this, she'll ask me, relationship questions, which no man likes because we all stink at the answers. Like, we're terrible at them. I think she expects some, sweet, well-thought-out answer, and it's never what she gets. I panic, and she gets a, deer in the headlights look and really lame answers most of the time, and then at 2 a.m. I sit up in bed, and I'm like, that's what I should have said. It was great. No, but one that she often asks, and I don't know how many times over 17 years she's asked me this, but one that she's often asked me is, do you love me like you did when we got married? And I have, at this point, every time, no. And I think the first time I told her no, it shocked her. Now she's used to it. But no, I don't, because it's grown. It's grown. It's not that young love that it was. It's grown. It's spreading. I grew up hearing the phrase, if you aren't green and growing, you're ripe and rotting. It's true of fruit. It's true of plants. It's true of trees. It's true of Christians. If a tree stops spreading its roots, it's only because it's dying. If a Christian stops learning, if a Christian stops growing, it's only because they're dying. Being rooted in God is trusting. Being rooted in God is spreading. And then lastly this evening, being rooted in God, I have it in my notes this way, being rooted in God is delighting. I had us look at Psalm 1. Turn back over there if you kept your place in it. If not, I did, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. Verse 1 and 2. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. So, delight. Delight means captivate. If I'm delighted by something or someone, I am captivated by it. I'm captivated by it. Boy, I have a lot of examples of my wife in this message. I don't know what I was thinking. I think good. I think they were all supposed to be good things, and I think they are mostly. But hold on. Delight. If I'm delighted in something or someone, I'm captivated by it. If I'm delighted in my wife, as a husband, if I am delighted in my wife, I am captivated by her. Meaning, as a husband, I shouldn't need to look at anyone else. I don't need to seek anyone else. I don't need to attach to anyone else. I don't need the attention of anyone else because I'm captivated by her. And if I'm not captivated by her as a husband, that's not her fault, it's mine. This is just a side note, because this is not the message, but if you aren't captivated by your spouse, it's not typically because they're doing something wrong. It's because you are. But back to our focus, if your delight is in the Lord, you won't need to seek the approval of anyone else. I don't need to seek the approval of someone and try to do the things that will make them happy or make them like me, because seeking God is all that will matter. I won't need to seek the pleasure of anyone else because the things that bring God pleasure are all that will matter to me. I won't need to seek comfort or closeness of anyone else because I don't need comfort from someone else. I have comfort from the Comforter. I'm captivated by God, where He is my only focus. He's the one I'm seeking to please. I want to keep from falling spiritually, regardless of what's happening around me. I need to be captivated in Him. That He's my focus. You know why? You know why problems cause us to trip up so often? It's because we get so focused on the problems. And in doing that, we miss our focus on God. We lose that. I liken it to, everyone has seen this. My kids and I were talking about this, I think, a week or so ago. Every child does this at some point, that they're running forward at full speed and they're looking backward. And they crash into something along the way. Spiritually, that's often what we do. We have God straight ahead of us, but we're looking at that problem as we're sprinting forward. And we wind up crashing because our focus, our attention isn't where it ought to be. If I'm captivated by Him, that's where my attention is going to be. It's where my focus is going to be. It's going to be a whole lot easier not to fall, just like I told my kids 10,000 times, if you're looking where you're running, you're probably not going to hurt yourself as much. If my eyes are where they ought to be, it's a whole lot easier not to fall. Conclusion this evening. Personally, I don't want to fall. Spiritually, I don't want to fall. I see Christians who, or I have seen Christians who fell. They again used to be in church, but some problem came along and it was big enough that a big enough wind that they fell. And I've seen friends who have fallen, that they're away from God, and pastors who have fallen. I don't want to fall. I want to be that tree that is planted by the rivers of water that shall not be moved. That happens by being rooted in God. It happens by being rooted in God, trusting Him, growing in Him, and delighting in Him. I'll end with the song I mentioned earlier. Jesus is my Savior, I shall not be moved. In His love and favor, I shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the waters, Lord, I shall not be moved. Let's get rooted in our God firmly enough so that that's true of us. So that when the droughts come, because they do, or when the storms come, I shall not be moved. Not because I'm strong. The tree doesn't say, or the tree can't say, I shall not be moved because it's big and tall and strong, but because of what it's rooted in. Let's get rooted enough in our God, growing in Him and trusting in Him, delighting in Him, so that when the storms come, I shall not be moved, not because of me, but because I am secure in